My parents raised me to believe our home would be my sister's inheritance, but a quiet decision I made turned their expectations upside down. I'm Kate, 32, from Texas, and it feels like I've spent my life living in the shadow of my older sister, Anna. She's 3 years my senior and has always been the golden child. You know the type. Effortlessly charming, intelligent, and sociable, able to talk her way out of anything. I, on the other hand, was the responsible one, which apparently translates to doing all the work and receiving none of the recognition. Growing up, Anna invariably received the best of everything. Her birthday parties were extravagant affairs in the backyard, complete with bounce houses and pony rides. Mine were simple pizza parties in the dining room with a grocery store cake. At Christmas, Anna got the Barbie dream house. I received a second-hand knockoff with a broken elevator. My parents would say, "You don't need all those fancy things, Kate. Be grateful for what you have." And I was grateful. I just couldn't help but notice that Anna's gratitude wasn't required in the same way. The disparity became especially clear when I started college. I worked incredibly hard in high school, balancing AP classes and extracurricular activities to maintain a high GPA. I was accepted to a local university and had planned to commute from home to save on dorm costs. Anna had gone to her dream school, and my parents had paid for everything. I naturally assumed they would assist me as well. I was wrong. When I suggested living at home, my mother looked at me as if I were insane. "If you're staying here, you'll need to contribute," she stated matter-of-factly. "We provided Anna with a full ride because she earned it. You need to learn responsibility." I was incredulous. I was 18, about to begin college, and they were already talking about me paying rent. Contribute turned out to be $400 a month for rent and utilities, not to mention the expectation that I would buy my own groceries. That might not seem like much, but it's a lot when you're a broke college freshman working part-time at a bookstore for $9 an hour. I tried to argue, reminding them how they had covered everything for Anna, how she never had to worry about money at school. My mother simply shrugged. "We gave Anna what she needed," she said. "You're different. You're independent. You'll figure it out." So I did. I worked as many hours as I could at the bookstore, occasionally skipping meals to make ends meet. Every morning, I'd walk past the campus coffee shop, envying the students who could afford lattes and pastries. Meanwhile, I ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and drank the free coffee from the bookstore break room. I don't believe I ever purchased a single textbook at full price. I bought all of mine used or borrowed them from the library. Each month, I handed over the $400 to my parents, while Anna was off at her out-of-state school, living in a brand new dorm my parents had paid for. She called me once to complain that her dorm's air conditioning wasn't cold enough, and I nearly lost it. I didn't even have air conditioning in my car because I couldn't afford to fix it. My parents still sent Anna spending money every month. I once overheard my mother on the phone saying, "We don't want her to struggle. College is hard enough." I stood there in the kitchen, clutching my dollar ramen noodles, wondering why none of that compassion ever extended to me. To make matters worse, my parents constantly praised Anna for her accomplishments. When she earned a 3.2 GPA in her communications program, they threw her a huge graduation party with a catered buffet and a DJ. When I graduated with a 3.9 GPA and a degree in computer science, we had a quiet dinner at home. My mother made lasagna and said, "Well, we don't want to make a fuss." Looking back, I think what hurt the most wasn't the lack of financial support. It was the clear message that I was less important. Anna was always portrayed as the star, the one with the potential, while I was simply there. Even when I achieved success, it was dismissed. "Kate's so capable. She doesn't need us." I remember them saying. It was almost a punishment, this being considered so independent. The moment I graduated college, I packed my bags and left. I found a cramped studio apartment near my first job and began building my life the way I envisioned. It wasn't a walk in the park, but the sense of liberation from their expectations was incredible. I poured my heart and soul into my work, lived simply, and diligently saved every penny I could. Meanwhile, Anna married Josh, who, despite his perpetual unemployment, was the apple of my parents' eye. They now have 3 children: Emily, who's 5, Mason, 4, and little Zach, only 2. It feels like my parents are always stepping in to rescue them. Just last year, when their car gave out, my parents handed them the money for a brand new one. And whenever Anna complained about the challenges of raising 3 young children, Mom and Dad were quick to offer their babysitting services every single weekend. I wish I could say it didn't sting anymore, but it does. No matter what I achieve or build on my own, I'll always feel like I'm playing second fiddle to Anna in their eyes. That's the reason I've become so guarded, so reluctant to share details about my life with my family. Deep down, I know they wouldn't truly appreciate or understand it anyway. So, I've been keeping things under wraps, but I recently made a significant decision. It's time to start the search for a house. I've been stuck in this tiny apartment for years, shelling out a ridiculous amount of money for what's essentially an overpriced closet, and I've been saving for what feels like an eternity. I finally reached a point where I thought, enough is enough. I deserve this. Now, here's the catch. I deliberately kept this information from my family, not because I was trying to hide some grand secret, but because they struggle to genuinely celebrate anyone else's accomplishments. It always turns into a collective undertaking with them. If I had even hinted at my plans, I knew they would immediately steer the conversation toward Anna and her kids and how anything I acquired should somehow benefit them. Therefore, I thought it would be best to keep my mouth shut until everything was finalized. Apparently, I was being too optimistic. I still can't figure out how it happened, but a coworker of mine, let's call her Lisa, somehow let the cat out of the bag. Lisa is the kind of person who's always meddling in everyone's affairs, and I guess she offhandedly mentioned to someone that I was looking at houses. That someone just happened to be Anna's neighbor, and from there, the news spread like wildfire. The joys of small-town Texas. A few days later, my mom called, her voice dripping with artificial cheerfulness. "Kate," she began, "why didn't you tell us you were looking for a house? I should have anticipated this, but I played it cool." "Oh, I'm just casually browsing right now. It's nothing serious." "Well, Anna and I were talking, and we have some fantastic ideas for you. You're going to need something spacious enough for everyone, at least 4 bedrooms for the kids, of course." "What? What kids? I don't have any kids," she continued as if this was the most normal conversation in the world. "You'll need plenty of room for Anna's family when they come to visit. And for us, too. Oh, and it would be wonderful if it was close to Anna's place." I don't know why I was even surprised. Somehow, she had already transformed my potential house into the solution to their problems. I mumbled something vague and hung up as quickly as I could, hoping it was just a one-time occurrence. But oh boy, was I wrong. From that day forward, my mom and Anna began bombarding me with house listings. I'm not exaggerating when I say it became like a second job for them. Every day, I would receive at least a dozen links to these ridiculous properties, enormous places with 4 or 5 bedrooms, swimming pools, 3-car garages, the whole shebang. It was as if they thought I was shopping for a mansion for a reality TV show. One day, Mom texted, "Did you see that one on Maple Street? It's a huge one. Just perfect." Another time, Anna sent me a link to a 6-bedroom house with a note that read, "This would be so ideal for us. We could finally have room to spread out." I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity, wondering how my buying a house had somehow turned into a group project. The worst part was they weren't even attempting to pretend it was about me. Every single house they suggested was geared toward Anna's family and their needs. "This one has a finished basement. Josh could set up his man cave there," followed by, "The kids would just love the pool at this place." And then, of course, "Look, Kate, there's even a guest room for Mom and Dad when they visit." It was utterly draining. Initially, I attempted a gentle course correction, reminding them that I was searching for something small, something just for me, but that only seemed to intensify their efforts. That's when I decided to simply stop responding. The group chat was muted, their texts ignored. I reasoned they'd eventually get the picture and move on. In the meantime, I continued my solitary house hunt. Evenings were dedicated to scrolling through Zillow listings, weekends spent discreetly attending open houses. I made sure to keep my destinations to myself, carefully avoiding anything even remotely close to Anna's neighborhood. The last thing I needed was someone reporting back to my mother. After weeks of searching, I finally stumbled upon it. A small, two-bedroom cottage just on the outskirts of the city. It had everything I'd been hoping for. A charming little porch, a sun-drenched kitchen, and a backyard just large enough for a vegetable garden. It wasn't luxurious, but it felt right. The instant I stepped inside, I knew it was mine. I submitted an offer, and after a few agonizing days of waiting, it was accepted. I can't even begin to describe the sense of liberation. For perhaps the first time in my life, I was doing something completely for myself, without the input or interference of anyone else. Naturally, I kept my family in the dark. I decided to let their helpful suggestions continue to flow while I quietly moved forward with the purchase. Then, completely out of the blue, my mom called. "We're having dinner next weekend," she announced. "You're coming, right?" I almost declined, but then I thought, you know what? Let's just get this over with. So, I'm going to this dinner, and I already know exactly how it's going to play out. They'll probably have a whole PowerPoint presentation prepared with different property options. But here's the best part. I'm planning to drop the bomb that I've already bought a house, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I can already picture the dramatic gasps and orchestrated complaints. Thanks for listening. I'll update everyone after the dinner. Dark Day 1. Hi again, Reddit. First off, I want to express my sincere gratitude for all the comments and advice on my last post. I've read most of them, and it's been a roller coaster of eye-opening realizations and much-needed laughter. A lot of you mentioned how unbelievably entitled my family sounds, and believe me, I couldn't agree more. Others shared their own experiences with similar situations, and honestly, it's incredibly comforting to know I'm not alone in navigating this kind of family dynamic. Anyway, I promised an update after the infamous dinner, so here it is. Buckle up because it was quite a ride. I arrived at my parents' house last Saturday at precisely 6 p.m., mentally bracing myself for whatever orchestrated chaos awaited me. The moment I stepped inside, the scene was already unfolding. Anna's children were careening around, screaming at the top of their lungs. Josh was sprawled out on the couch, glued to the TV, and my mom was frantically bustling about in the kitchen. She glanced over and said, "Oh, good. You're on time for once." A great start, naturally. We sat down for dinner, and initially it was the standard, predictable small talk. Dad complained about the rising gas prices. Josh launched into a rant about something that had happened at work, and Anna whined incessantly about the overwhelming challenges of managing 3 children. "Zach keeps waking up in the middle of the night," she said, piling mashed potatoes onto her plate. "We're just so cramped in our current space. I feel like I'm losing my mind." I knew exactly where this conversation was headed, but I played along, offering sympathetic nods while focusing intently on my lasagna. Then, my mom cleared her throat in that particular way she does when she's about to make a grand announcement. "Kate," she began with an exaggerated, overly enthusiastic smile. "We've been talking, and we think we've found the perfect house for you." I nearly choked on my water. Of course, they'd come armed with a meticulously prepared plan. "Oh, really?" I responded, trying to keep my voice as neutral as possible. "Yes," Anna chimed in, her eyes gleaming. The place they were talking about was beautiful, no question, and so close, only a few blocks. 5 bedrooms, a yard big enough to get lost in, even a separate guest suite. Before I could even form a coherent thought, Mom was already steamrolling ahead. "It's perfect. Everyone will be so comfortable. The kids can finally have their own space, and Josh can set up his office. And the neighborhood, the schools are excellent." I just stared. It was like I wasn't even there, or if I was, my opinion didn't matter. It was all about them. Anna, radiating smugness, chimed in. "We can go see it tomorrow if you want." That was the breaking point. I'd had enough. I set my fork down, the clink echoing in the sudden quiet. "Actually," I said, "I already bought a house." The air in the room instantly thickened. You could have heard a pin drop. Even the kids stopped their usual squabbling. "What?" Mom's voice was sharp, laced with disbelief. "I bought a house," I repeated, trying to keep my voice level. A small, two-bedroom cottage just outside the city. It's perfect. For me. For a fleeting second, a foolish hope flickered that they might actually be happy for me. But then Mom's face flushed crimson, and Anna's jaw dropped so low I thought it might detach. A cottage. Anna's tone dripped with disdain. How are we supposed to fit in a cottage? You're not, I said, the words tight in my throat. Because it's my house. I bought it for me. Mom cut in before Anna could launch another attack. Kate, how could you make such a huge decision without even talking to us? We've been working so hard to find the perfect place. For you. I took a breath, struggling to stay calm. No, Mom. You've been working hard to find the perfect place for Anna and her family. I didn't need your help. I knew what I wanted, and I bought it. Anna's voice took on that familiar, high-pitched whine, like she was about to burst into tears. But we need this, Kate. Do you have any idea how cramped we are in that tiny apartment? Emily and Mason have to share a room, and Zach's crib is in our bedroom. It's not fair to the kids. I clenched my fists under the table, fighting the urge to scream. That's not my problem, Anna. I've worked damn hard to get to this point, and I'm not giving up my dream house to fix your living situation. Then Dad decided to weigh in. He slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump, and said, You're being incredibly selfish, Kate. Family is supposed to help each other. What's wrong with you? I stood up, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I'm not selfish. I'm finally standing up for myself, and if that makes me the bad guy in your eyes, then so be it. The room erupted. Anna dissolved into sobs. Mom started ranting about how she'd raised me better, and Dad launched into a lecture about how disappointed he was. Josh, meanwhile, just kept shoveling food into his mouth, completely oblivious to the emotional carnage around him. I grabbed my purse and walked out. Mom followed me to the door, shouting, You can't just walk away from your family like this. I turned back, anger and a strange sense of liberation bubbling inside me. Watch me, I said, and then I walked out. I drove home, shaking, a weird mix of anger and relief warring inside me. I feel like I finally stood my ground, but now I'm bracing myself for the fallout. The silence from them since then has been deafening. So that's where things stand. I'll let you know what happens next. And thank you again for all the support. You have no idea how much it's helping me right now. Hi again, Reddit. I just wanted to say thank you again for all your support and comments after my last update. I was really overwhelmed by the outpouring of encouragement, and honestly, it's been a lifeline helping me to keep some semblance of sanity. So many of you were right. I should have seen this coming. Well, after that dinner from hell, things escalated exactly the way I feared. So here's the update, and it's not pretty. That night, a text from Anna was the first sign of the storm brewing. A picture message popped up. Her kids sprawled on their couch, toys overflowing everywhere. The caption read, Look how cramped we are. Do you think this is fair to Emily and Mason? I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the keyboard, but I couldn't formulate a response. How could I? Was I supposed to apologize for the size of her apartment? Did my buying a home somehow shrink her space? I silenced my phone and turned over, hoping the silence would make it all disappear. Of course, it didn't. The next morning dawned with a jolt. 5 missed calls from Mom. A barrage of texts from Anna. You always think about yourself. I thought family mattered to you, one accused. Mom is so upset she couldn't even sleep last night. Another guilt. And then, the real kicker. You've changed, Kate. This isn't the sister I grew up with, right? The sister she grew up with was too accustomed to being overlooked to ever stand up for herself. I tried to block it out, burying myself in work, but the messages kept coming. Every few hours, Mom would add her 2 cents. You're being so selfish, Kate. We're all disappointed in you. Think about what you're doing to Anna's children. You need to reconsider. It's not too late to sell the house and buy something better suited for the family. I muted them both. But then the voicemail started. Little guilt bombs dropped straight into my ear. It was the same message amplified by their voices. Mom sounded genuinely hurt and angry. Anna's voice trembled. like she was about to cry. Once, Dad even called, yelling for what felt like an eternity about how I was destroying the family. The onslaught didn't end there. A few days later, my aunt, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, called. "I heard about what's going on with Anna," she said. "Can't you find it in your heart to help? Family comes first, Kate." The audacity of it made me laugh. This was the aunt who barely acknowledged me growing up. I told her I wasn't discussing it and hung up. Then came the Facebook posts. Anna posted a picture of her kids crammed into their bunk bed with the caption, "All they want is a little space to grow, but I guess some people think family isn't worth helping anymore." The comments section exploded with sympathy from her friends, none of whom knew the full story. "You're such a great mom," someone wrote. "Whoever's letting you down doesn't deserve you. How could anyone leave you guys in that situation?" I wanted to scream, to defend myself, but I knew it would just make me look petty. So, I stayed silent, scrolling numbly through the accusations. But the worst was yet to come. Mom posted a picture of my house on her own page, where she even got it, I don't know, with the caption, "It's so sad when someone forgets where they came from. Family sacrifices so much for you, and this is how they repay you." I blocked them both instantly, but the damage was done. A coworker messaged me, asking what was going on. Apparently Lisa, yes, that Lisa, had seen the post and was spreading gossip like wildfire. Now half the office probably thought I'd abandoned my family to live in some ridiculous mansion. For the record, my house is a cozy cottage. It's not exactly a palace. The constant stress was starting to take its toll. Every time my phone buzzed, anxiety shot through me. I stopped checking social media altogether and started avoiding my inbox. Even at work, I couldn't focus, constantly bracing myself for the next attack. Things reached a breaking point when Anna showed up at my door one evening unannounced. I opened it to find her standing there, Zach on her hip, the other two kids clinging to her legs. She looked completely worn out, and the kids were all crying or whining. "Kate," she said, her voice breaking, "we need to talk." I crossed my arms, blocking the entrance. "What do you want, Anna? Please," she begged, tears welling up in her eyes. "We don't have anywhere else to go. The landlord's raising our rent again, and we can't afford it. Just let us stay with you for a little while. The kids need stability." My heart sank, but I stood my ground. It was Anna on the phone, and honestly, the desperation in her voice made my stomach clench. "I'm sorry things are so tough, Anna, but my place just isn't an option." Felt awful to say, but it was the truth. My house is small, barely enough room for me, let alone her and the kids. And, deep down, a resentful little voice whispered, "It's not my responsibility." The look she gave me then, like I'd personally orchestrated her hardship. "So, that's it? You're just leaving us to drown?" The accusation stung. "I'm not leaving you to drown. I've busted my tail to get where I am, and I refuse to be bullied into giving up everything I've worked for." She mumbled something under her breath, a curse probably, before turning on her heel. Her kids, looking lost and bewildered, trailed after her. I closed the door, leaning against it, the wood pressing into my back. Guilt warred with a fierce sense of self-preservation. The next morning, Mom called, her voice laced with disappointment and judgment. "How could you be so heartless, Kate? Turning Anna away like that?" The accusations poured out. Cold, ungrateful, a litany of future regrets. I hung up without a word, the silence on my end the only defense I could muster. Even now, as I type this, their texts are relentless, a constant barrage on my phone. Mom's sending walls of guilt-ridden paragraphs, and Anna's sending photos of the kids, their faces pleading. Dad even left a voicemail just now, starting with a sarcastic, "I hope you're happy," which I promptly deleted. I'm at my breaking point. The absolute first thing I'm doing tomorrow is changing my number, and it's only going to be given to people I truly trust and my workplace. It's clear they won't stop until I completely shut them out. I'll tackle the social media battlefield later, tightening my privacy settings and blocking anyone who tries to stir things up, one step at a time. I'll let you all know how it goes after I've taken care of everything. I can't thank you enough for all the comments and support. It's honestly helping me stay afloat through this storm. Salt 83. Hey Reddit, an update. I've been reading through your comments, and wow, you all really went in. A lot of you were frustrated that I hadn't blocked my family sooner. And you know what? You were absolutely right. After changing my number, I went ahead and blocked them on everything. Facebook, Instagram, even those distant relatives who might have tried to play mediator. Felt incredible. A sense of liberation I hadn't realized I craved. But, of course, that peace didn't last. I should have known better. It started last weekend. I was in the backyard, battling with a lavender plant. Google makes it seem so simple, but I swear I've already killed 3. I was trying to figure out what I was doing wrong when I heard a knock at the front door. I was expecting a delivery, maybe the neighbor wanting to borrow a cup of sugar. But when I opened the door, there she was, Mom, standing on my porch with a pie in her hands and the fakest smile I've ever seen. "Hi, Kate," she chirped, like she was just popping over for a casual visit after weeks of radio silence. Hi," I managed, completely caught off guard. For a split second, I considered not even letting her in, but she thrust the pie towards me. "I thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing. I brought your favorite apple." I wanted to laugh, or maybe cry. My favorite is cherry, but whatever, Mom. Against my better judgment, I let her in. I didn't want to create a scene. She set the pie on the counter and started looking around the house, almost like she was taking inventory of my life. "This is lovely, Kate," she said, running her hand along the back of a chair. "You've done a great job." I mumbled a quick thanks, unsure of what to say, waiting for her to get to the point. She sat down at my kitchen table and sighed dramatically. "I wanted to apologize," she began, her voice carefully modulated. "Things got a little heated, and I realize now that we were wrong to push you like that. You've worked so hard for this house, and I should have respected your decisions." I stared at her, trying to decipher her true intentions. It sounded nice on the surface, but something about her tone felt off. Then came the speech about how proud she was of me and how the stress of Anna's situation had made everyone act out. "But that's no excuse," she added, giving me this sad, almost pleading look. For a fleeting moment, I felt myself softening, wondering if she was genuinely trying to mend fences. Then she hit me with the punchline. "I was thinking maybe we could have a fresh start. I'd love to bring Anna and the kids over sometime. It would be great for them to see your new place." Her words hung in the air, and a knot tightened in my stomach. I struggled to maintain a neutral expression. "I don't think that's a good idea right now," I managed, choosing my words with extreme caution. "Things are still delicate, and I'm simply not ready for that kind of gathering yet." She nodded, or at least made the physical gesture, but I could see the disappointment flicker in her eyes. "Of course, I understand," she replied, but the smile that accompanied it felt strained, forced. Her gaze darted around the room, lingering on the furniture, the artwork, almost as if she were calculating the space, appraising its value. It made me deeply uneasy. After what felt like an eternity of polite, superficial conversation, she announced, "Well, I should probably be going. Thanks for having me." I walked her to the door, a silent observer to my own discomfort. As she stood on the porch, poised to leave, she turned back to me, her expression softening slightly. "I really mean it, Kate. I just want us to be a family again." I offered a curt nod, unable to vocalize any kind of agreement or denial. I closed and locked the door, leaning against it for a moment, my eyes fixed on the untouched pie sitting on the kitchen counter. Something about the entire encounter felt staged, insincere. For days afterward, the conversation replayed itself in my mind, each word, each inflection analyzed and dissected. Was she truly sincere? Or was this just another carefully orchestrated manipulation? The timing felt far too convenient. After weeks of relentless messages and calls, the moment I finally established boundaries, she appears at my doorstep with an apology and a baked offering. It didn't sit well with me how easily she glossed over the past. No mention of the harassing texts, the desperate voicemails, the fact that I'd been forced to block her number. It was as if she was rewriting history, pretending none of it had ever transpired. And the suggestion about bringing Anna and the kids, it felt calculated, a probe to test the limits of my tolerance, to see how much I was willing to endure. I haven't initiated contact since then, and to my surprise, she hasn't reached out either. Despite this temporary lull, I can't shake the unsettling feeling that this is far from over. Knowing my family dynamics, I anticipate another escalation, another wave of drama on the horizon. Hi Reddit, I'm back, and I have an update, a substantial one. Hopefully, this will be the last I share on this topic. I dearly wish I could say things have settled down, but instead, the situation has escalated from mildly irritating to utterly chaotic. I barely know where to begin, but suffice it to say, I'm officially withdrawing any lingering benefit of the doubt I extended to my family. Remember when my mother made that surprise visit, bearing the peace offering of a pie? At the time, I mentioned that an intuitive unease accompanied the gesture. Turns out that my instincts were correct. Her presence in my home sparked an internal alarm that now resonates with clarity. She displayed an unusual degree of interest in the specific details of my house. The security of the locks, the spatial arrangement of the rooms, the placement of my belongings. Initially, I dismissed this as mere nosiness, a familial trait I've long been accustomed to. However, I now recognize it as a component of a larger, more insidious plan. In the days following her visit, I attempted to resume my normal routine. Work was demanding, requiring me to spend long hours in my new home office, consumed by deadlines. My thoughts drifted away from my family drama. The period of relative quiet after her visit led me to believe that perhaps they had finally conceded and were respecting my boundaries. Then came Saturday. I had left the house in the morning to complete a series of errands. Grocery shopping, a quick stop at Target, and retrieving a package from the post office. I returned home around noon, laden with bags, anticipating a peaceful weekend of relaxation and domesticity. As I turned into the driveway, a jarring sight disrupted my expectations. Anna's SUV was parked directly in front of my house. An immediate wave of apprehension washed over me. Keys trembling in my grasp, I approached the front door, and that's when I heard the unmistakable sound of voices emanating from within. At first, I desperately clung to the hope that I had inadvertently left a window open, or perhaps the television was running unattended. But as I stepped across the threshold into the entryway, a stark and unwelcome realization crashed over me with the force of a physical blow. Anna, Josh, and their children were inside my house. The second I walked through the door, I was hit by a wall of noise and a visual assault. Emily and Mason, my niece and nephew, were sprawled across my couch, surrounded by a chaotic explosion of toys and junk food, none of which belonged to them. Zach, the youngest, was happily gnawing on one of my decorative throw pillows, treating it like a giant teething ring. In the kitchen, I found Josh, Anna's husband, with my refrigerator door wide open, casually helping himself to whatever he could find. And Anna? She was in the sunroom, single-handedly rearranging my carefully curated furniture arrangement, as if she were starring in her own home renovation show. What in the world is going on here? The words escaped my lips before I could stop them, my voice trembling slightly with a mixture of disbelief and rising anger. Anna glanced up, completely unfazed by my obvious distress. "Oh, hey, Kate. We just thought it would be easier if we moved in while you were out." I stared at her, struggling to process the sheer audacity of her words. "Moved in? Are you serious?" She actually rolled her eyes, as if I were the one acting unreasonably. "Mom gave us the key. She said it would be fine." A wave of heat rushed to my face. "Mom gave you what key?" "The spare one," she replied, casually gesturing towards the kitchen counter, where I remembered leaving it during Mom's last visit. "We really needed the space, and your house is perfect. Could have been bigger if you'd listened to us about that extension, but it will do. And Josh can finally have a proper office." "Get out," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly calm, considering the turmoil inside me. "Kate, don't be like that," Josh interjected, leaning against my fridge with a half-eaten sandwich in his hand. "You're single. You don't need all this space. This house makes way more sense for our family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were talking about my home as if it were some inherited property, something automatically designated for Anna's use by our parents. Get out of my house, I repeated, my voice louder this time, laced with a sharper edge. Anna scoffed. We're family, Kate. Stop being so dramatic. We've already started settling in, and the kids love it here. It's not like you are using all this space anyway. I was speechless, completely overwhelmed by their blatant disregard for my feelings and my property. I couldn't even form a coherent argument. Instead, I reached for my phone, my hands shaking slightly, and started dialing 911. Seriously? Anna's voice dripped with disbelief. You're calling the cops on your own family? Watch me, I retorted, holding the phone up so she could clearly see who I was calling. When the dispatcher answered, I calmly explained the situation, stating that my sister and her family had broken into my home and were refusing to leave. Both Anna and Josh tried to argue with me while I was on the phone, attempting to justify their actions, but I ignored them, focusing solely on the dispatcher's questions. By the time the police arrived, I was trembling with adrenaline, but also determined not to let them get away with their outrageous behavior. The officers were professional but firm. They questioned Anna and Josh about their presence in my house, and their explanation was, unsurprisingly, ridiculous. We're family, Anna stated again, as if familial ties somehow superseded basic laws of property. Josh continued to ramble on about how I had plenty of space and how it was the right thing to do. The officers were not buying it. They informed Anna and Josh that they were trespassing and that they needed to leave immediately. Anna started to cry, claiming she didn't realize it was such a big deal, and Josh mumbled something under his breath about me being selfish. I remained silent throughout the entire exchange, allowing the police to handle the situation. It was surprisingly satisfying to watch Anna and Josh gather their belongings, including the pilfered snacks from my pantry, and shuffle out the door, defeated. After they had finally left, one of the officers pulled me aside and inquired whether I wanted to press charges. I paused for a moment, considering the option. Honestly, all I wanted was for them to be gone and to restore the sense of peace in my home. I informed the officer that I didn't want to press charges as long as they stayed away from my property. He nodded in agreement and stated that they would file a report in case of any future incidents. Once they were gone, I locked the door and stood there for what felt like a long time, simply trying to absorb everything that had just happened. My house felt different somehow, tainted, almost violated. The sense of security I'd always felt was now replaced by a lingering unease. The sheer audacity of them letting themselves in without so much as a phone call, a thought for how I might feel. It makes my skin crawl. I felt violated. The locksmith's coming tomorrow to change all the locks. That much is certain. And frankly, I'm seriously considering a full-blown security system, cameras and everything. I'm drawing a line here and now. I can no longer excuse them. This wasn't some accidental slip-up, some moment of weakness or dire need. This was a blatant act of entitlement, pure and simple. Honestly, I'm still reeling, trying to process that my own sister believed that barging into my home was somehow acceptable, and that my mother facilitated it, handed over the key as if it were nothing. I'm almost speechless about that. Cut so deep. First thing this morning, I was on the phone to my lawyer. I recounted the whole sorry saga, every single detail. We drafted a formal cease and desist letter, which has now been sent to Mom, Anna, and Josh. It lays out precisely what they did, how it made me feel, and unequivocally states that if they persist in this behavior, if they continue to harass me, I will not hesitate to pursue legal action. I have to protect myself and my home. So that's where I am right now. The anger still simmers, a low, constant burn. But there's also a strange numbness settling in, almost a detached feeling. A part of me keeps circling back to the same, exhausting question. Is this truly over? Or are they already plotting their next move? I'm terrified of what's to come. I can only hope this letter serves as a strong deterrent. Finally, I wanted to thank everyone who has been following my story and offering their support. Your words of encouragement, your validation that I wasn't overreacting, and even the occasional dose of tough love. It's meant the world to me, more than I can possibly express. Knowing I'm not alone in this mess has been a lifeline.